Chris Wilson. He was Director of Research and Digital Strategy for Ted Cruz's 2016 campaign. He's CEO of WPA Intelligence. He's in Oklahoma City. Chris, thanks for joining us. Is the president in trouble?
I think any incumbent president is having to deal with governing in the middle of a pandemic is going to have challenges. And that's clearly what we're seeing right now. We went from having the best economy in American history to the worst economy of American history in a matter of months, if not days. And yeah, that creates challenges. So I think no matter who the incumbent is, and having to govern under this scenario is creates problems and creates trouble. So yes, it's be foolish of me to say anything other than that.
We got more primaries this week in Kansas. Chris Kobach lost his bid. That helps Trump, doesn't he?
I don't know that it helps Trump, but it helps Republicans keep the Senate. I think Chris Kobach, he was the Republican nominee for governor 2 years ago and lost. And it's very rare for a Republican to lose an election in Kansas, home of Bob Dole. And so if he had been the nominee, I think it would have probably put that seat into jeopardy. And so I think Mitch McConnell and the Republican majority in the Senate is a lot safer today. I don't really think it would have had any impact on the Trump campaign, though. And so it was, from a standpoint of what it does help, though, is it's clear that the president was cheering for Roger Marshall, and it probably had gotten close to endorsement, never did make one, but it was the first phone call that Marshall made last night when he was declared the winner was to the president.
What do you make of the Senate? Can the Republicans keep it?
If the election were held today, I think it'd be bad for Republicans. But that's the good thing is elections aren't held in August; they're held in November, and so there's plenty of time for campaigns to be run. I think there are a lot of races. I'll give you some interesting statistics, Larry. When an incumbent is running for re-election and the president wins his state, and they're of the same party, that incumbent wins 90% of the time. If the president loses his or her state, that incumbent only wins 65% of the time. That's a pretty big difference. And so you look at, it's likely that the president loses Maine and Colorado. It's not a done deal, but it's likely. And so that makes, a couple of uphill races there for Cory Gardner and Susan Collins. But I will say if there are two people you would want having to fight an uphill battle, it would be Susan Collins in Maine and Cory Gardner in Colorado. They are both very well liked. They are strong, indefatigable campaigners, and I think they'll both end up winning on election day. And so you take that, and then you look at it's likely that President Trump wins in North Carolina, where you've got a tough race there for Tom Tillis, but I think that helps him win. Like I said, remember that 90% number. I think it's likely that the president wins in Arizona, where Martha McSally's got a tough race, but again, remember that 90% number. And it's likely the president wins in Iowa, where you've got, and Montana, he's certainly going to win, where there's also tough races. So I think overall, the Senate, they may come down a seat or so behind on those races I just went through, but you've got to factor in Alabama, where Tommy Tuberville's the Republican nominee running against incumbent Democrat Doug Jones, Doug Jones is not going to get reelected. That's just the bottom line. I don't care how much Democrats want to spend that they've got to spend. They have a chance there. They don't. And so Tommy Tuberville is going to be the next seat there, and that gives Republicans one seat, so it gives them an extra seat to play with in terms of the scenario.
In other words, it's going to be close.
It will definitely be close. That's right. You could have a vice president spending a lot of time up the road in the Capitol casting votes in 2021.
All right, a recent interview the president gave with Jonathan Swan of Axios News discussing the coronavirus. Did you think the president acquitted himself well?
I think there's a lot that you can unpack from that interview. And I think Jonathan proves himself over and over again to be, a budding Larry King. He's just a phenomenal interviewer and can really get the most out of people. But it's unfortunate, I think, to what the interview has become. Because the left loves to take excerpts and use them to attack Trump. But the reality is what you had in that interview was Donald Trump trying to share what he's doing for the country in an unprecedented pandemic. We don't have any interviews we don't have any video of interviews during the Spanish flu, so who knows? Maybe it was the same kind of thing. And then they try to turn that into a gotcha. So look, we've all had fun with the freeze frames of Swan's reactions, and they're funny, and everybody loves a freeze frame. But the people posting about them, I think, are saying really more about themselves, an unserious reaction to a very deadly, serious situation. And the reality is, when it gets down to it, and what the president was trying to address is this is a large, diverse, liberty-loving country. And look, again, I know Jonathan, I consider him a friend, but Australia and the United States are not the same place. And when the president can mobilize resources, encourage people to do the right thing, the federal government is not going to do the same things here that they may do in Australia or what they may do in other countries around the world. They're not going to force people to not congregate, not go to church. They're not going to force people to stay home and refuse and neglect doing things that we want to do as a freedom-loving country, and that maybe governments and other freedom-loving countries have done. So did he handle himself well? I think he handled himself the way that we've gotten used to him handling, and I think we've also had the kind of reactions we've gotten used to having over the last 4 years.
Do you think COVID-19 is going to be the #1 issue in November?
You know, Larry, I think it will, unless there's a vaccination that is approved before then. And wouldn't that be the ultimate October surprise? You know, we like to sit around every 4 years and talk about what might be the October surprise going into a presidential election. And you think through back in the 2000 election, you remember the George W. Bush's DUI came out the weekend before the election. We've kind of had a series of these that have hit it. What would happen, and what would be the reaction from the mainstream media, from Democrats, from even the Biden campaign, if the Trump administration was able to relax regulations and push through a vaccination in October? Well, on one hand, it's going to save a lot of lives, and on the other hand, it probably takes the Biden campaign's #1 issue off the table. And I think, look, I've worked in a lot of campaigns, and you struggle with things, and that would be a difficult position for them to be in. If that does not occur, then yes, absolutely. I think, and it's not just COVID-19; it's the impact it's had on the economy, it's the impact it's had on freedom. I think all those things together are facets of it, but if it's all in the same situation as today, yeah, no question, it's the #1 issue.
You don't want to rush to a vaccine, though, if you bring it out too soon and it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, exactly. And who do you try it out on? Who becomes the guinea pigs? Who's going to step forward and do that? It's a really difficult situation to be in.
Now, what are your thoughts on Joe Biden? It's hard to dislike Joe Biden, wouldn't you agree?
I've never met
frankly,
Joe Biden.
He's been around a long time.
He has definitely been around a long time. He's been in office longer than I've been alive, although many of your viewers probably won't believe that. But the thing is about Biden is there's no Joe Biden campaign functionally. At this point, it's sort of, I played basketball my whole life, and we used to try and run a fast break offense, and we used to really hate those teams that ran a four corners offense to try and run out the clock. And that's why I love the shot clock came out when I was in high school, and I was really appreciative of that. There's no shot clock on Joe Biden, and right now he is doing everything he can to run out the clock, and he's letting the mainstream media run his campaign for him. And there's not, Larry, I would challenge you or your next guest or any of your viewers to say, name me one policy that Joe Biden has submitted and has advanced in terms of an idea that could change the challenges we have right now. There's no Biden ideas. There's no one around Biden who wants to talk about the policy of the Democrat Party. So all they want to do is hide and wait and hope. And Joe Biden is a likable person, but every time he goes on TV and every time he gives an interview, he puts himself in a more difficult situation, a more difficult position. And frankly, I think his best strategy would be what they seem to be doing for most of July, which is just keep him in his basement.
Which of his proposed vice presidential nominees concerns you the most as a Republican?
Well, I don't know who all's proposed. There's been so many trial balloons floated at this point that none of them, I think, are strategic in their nature. You've got Elizabeth Warren, who's from Massachusetts. He's definitely going to win Massachusetts. You've got Kamala Harris, who's from California. He's definitely going to win California. You've got some members of Congress that, frankly, I can't even name because there's been so many that have come up, and I don't really know of any of them. I remember the one, and her name escapes me right now, from Florida, who had praised Fidel Castro, and that's not exactly what you want in a candidate for the highest office or the second highest office in the land, and so she immediately denounced that. But I think from an overall standpoint, when it gets down to it, the vice presidential pick is not really all that important. It doesn't make a big difference. All he has to do is not screw it up. And look, there is, I think what Biden's choice is, Larry, is if he truly wants to be a transformational figure, does he appoint somebody who's the future of the party, who's a Kamala Harris. I mean, she's young, she is fresh. I think she really did herself well in the presidential campaign. Or does he take someone who represents his generation of the party, an Elizabeth Warren, who is about his same age, and it doesn't represent the future so much? And I think that's going to be the interesting aspect of it strategically, Larry, is whether or not it is a choice for the future or a choice that represents his generation. And based on that decision, I think it'll tell us a lot about what he's trying to accomplish and what message he's going to try and send for the fall.
What do you think of making the census end early?
You know, I live in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and I've watched our governor send out multiple messages to make sure everybody fills out the census as quickly as possible because everybody wants to be well represented. Having said that, I also understand that there are not a lot of government resources right now to direct to the census. So I always hesitate to second guess decisions that are made by people who have more information or more facts on a certain situation than I do. And so I don't know that I make much out of it other than that I'm hoping that it's being made for honorable reasons.
What is the WPA, your organization? What do you do?
Well, we are a data analytics predictive modeling company. And so, Larry, I don't want to creep your viewers out too much, but if they see an ad that on your program that they think targets them directly, well, odds are it does. And we take data, millions and millions of data points. To put it in perspective, in 2018, we built over 3 billion with a B voter scores that we scored to the American voting public, predicting one of a few things: whether they would vote, who they would vote for, and what messages might motivate them to vote or persuade them to vote. Now, I would argue, and it probably won't surprise you to hear this, that it is the way campaigns are meant to be run.
Chris, let's not spend too much time not having you back. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Larry. It's good to see you again.